thank you for having me today. TSCC Plus is actually a very close friend of ours. We actually used to share the same office in Taipei, so it goes without saying that we're actually very, very close friends. But this is the first time I'm speaking to an international audience community at TSCC Plus, which is very interesting, and it really it means a lot to me actually. So talk a little about us, but I was actually born and raised in Singapore. Anyone from Singapore here? No? Okay. And I grew up there, and I lived in Shanghai. I guess no one's from Shanghai. Shanghai, Beijing, London. Anyone from London, UK? No? And then Hong Kong. Guess not.
I was in Shanghai for 6 years.
Shanghai, 6 years. Great, great. I was there. Love it. Which years were you there?
Yeah.
Which year were you in Shanghai?
2008 to 14.
Oh, yeah, we overlapped. I was there 7 to 19-ish. Yeah. Thailand, Bangkok. Oh, you're from?
Yeah.
Oh, you're sorry? Bangkok. Yeah. So I was in Bangkok for in and out of Bangkok for about a year, working with the BTS group to set up joint ventures there, and then finally moved home. So in Japan, or from Japan, that's where one of our core offices is as well. So spent a lot of my life not living in Taiwan. But the reason why I came back to Taiwan is because I really wanted Taiwan's entrepreneurial space to be more global and wanted Taiwan to be in more places around the world, but at the same time for the rest of the world to be here, like today, right? Because I think there is a lot Taiwan can offer in so many different forms, and most importantly, Taiwanese people are pretty nice, right? So really hope that you guys are enjoying your stay here, and it will be a fruitful trip for all of you. Now, a little bit about ourselves before we go into deep research and analytics about the AI space. So High Ventures that we founded in 2019 was founded by me and my two partners, and we've been first movers in the data and AI space since 2008. So we are today the first dedicated AI and data fund in Taiwan. We only invest in Taiwanese anywhere around the world, or people who come to Taiwan and make Taiwan your headquarters, your base of operations here. So you could have businesses anywhere, and we hope all our portfolio companies have businesses anywhere around the world, because while Taiwan is a very vibrant society, we are only 25 million people. We're smaller than Thailand. We're smaller than Japan, obviously, Korea, India, obviously. We're a very, very small island, which means it is not large enough as an economy to build a large business, but it is a great stepping stone into multiple markets all across Asia. So that's why we invest in Taiwanese all around the world, and anyone who makes Taiwan a base of operations. Today we have Canadian from where Thor lives, Nova Scotia. He has been in Taiwan for 12 years, longer than I have, and his business is in Europe and in Greater Asia. But Taiwan is his R&D and his base of operations, so that counts for us as well. So prior to starting Hive, we were also the first wave of data and AI entrepreneurs in Asia. And that meant that we were dealing with a lot of Mandarin NLP technology, large volumes of data, which today that system covers about 1.5 billion people every single day. We profile 1.5 billion every single day all across Asia. And we analyze that for multiple different purposes, including for marketing and advertising purposes. And that business took us to eventually become the first data and AI startup to be listed on NASDAQ in 2017. So with that background, we decided we wanted to come back and establish a fund here in Taiwan focused on what we're doing. So 3 of us have been partners since 2008. And we think that our experience, our wealth of experience in failure can maybe help us become better VCs or investors and partners to our startups, because we have failed in almost every imaginable way possible. The only thing we didn't fail at was believing in ourselves, so we managed to eventually crawl it all the way to IPO. And in the wise words of the CEO of NASDAQ, who's still CEO of NASDAQ, Dina, and the SEC in the States, we were the hardest IPO in the history of NASDAQ. And today, I think we still are. But the only difference between us and all the others is that we actually managed to ring that bell eventually, after surviving a snowstorm, a bomb explosion, and 2 robberies left and right of us. We managed to do our IPO. Okay, so that's us. And today we've invested across, like I said, across the data and AI space, from networking, data, AI, machine learning, and applications and services, the various different tiers of building out a elastic or autonomous enterprise from an operations standpoint. While our thesis sounds very small, but we've actually invested in entrepreneurs across 6 geographies, including the UK, in India, in China, East and West Coast of the US, Singapore, Taiwan, so on and so forth. So it's actually quite a large footprint of people for a very small fund. Now, which takes us to the State of Taiwan Enterprise AI report. So we are a VC fund. What are we doing writing an AI report? Fundamentally because we invest in this space. And we realized that the clients of the things we invest in have no clue where they are, where the rest of their peers are, and how they're going to go forward in this space. We spend a lot of time, as investors, we spend a lot of time helping our portfolios develop business, connecting with potential customers, be it small, medium businesses or large conglomerates in Taiwan. But we realized that even our most sophisticated companies, with the exception of maybe our leading semiconductor companies like TSMC, whom I'm sure all of you have heard of, making us the most dangerous and safest place in the world. Simultaneously, TSMC is unique. They are very, very clear what they're doing. However, even within the semiconductor industry, or another industry that Taiwan's very well known for, which is the electronic manufacturing services, for contract manufacturing, for iPhone, for every device or electronic device you see. We have Foxconn, we have Wistron, we have Quanta, we have all these guys. Even these guys, some of the most, according to the World Economic Forum, the most advanced manufacturers in the world, don't necessarily have a very clear view of how their business is going to become AI or empowered by AI. But then again, everyone's talking about it. I'm sure not just in Taiwan. I'm sure everywhere around the world, everyone's talking about adopting, harnessing AI technologies to unleash opportunities, so on and so forth. But where exactly are you? And how do businesses think about adopting AI technologies? Where are they also influences what kind of services and products they would buy at every stage of that evolution. So in order to understand that, we decided to embark on a study, a quantitative study, a research survey across large, small, medium, and small enterprises all across Taiwan to understand where we're at and what other potential opportunities for people who develop data, AI, software, or application services for these people, for these customers, right? So that's why we embarked on it. This year, 2022, was the second edition of our research. We started it in 2021, and we will share some of the trends and movements in what we see in our research through this presentation as well. Okay, so it was presented on 29th March 2022 at Galaxy Summit, which is our annual tech conference in Taiwan. So we're very glad to have the support of many partners in helping us complete the survey. So including our portfolio as well, but also the AI Academy in Taiwan, and helping us propagate the research and to help us really refine our methodology in doing this. And also thanks to the ASVDA, the National Development Council of Taiwan, to support us in doing this every single year. So our edition last year and this year were covered by press in AI-related or venture-related press in the US, Japan, and across Southeast Asia as well. So for this year's survey, it's conducted for about exactly a month across 270 respondents in Taiwan, representing basically about 50% of them are what we call small, medium businesses, anything a little smaller than 200 employees within a company. According to Taiwan's Ministry of Economic Affairs, that is small, medium business. So about half of our respondents are in the small, medium business field, and the other half are in the medium to large enterprises space. And as you can see, it represents a spread of companies across various industries, from manufacturing, banking, finance, healthcare, telecommunication, and whatnot. Obviously, manufacturing plays a huge part in this because Taiwan is largely manufacturing based. We're still what I call very blue collar in terms of our business, which is essentially most of Asia. We're blue collar economies, and that's why manufacturing covers about 25% of all respondents in our survey. Our methodology takes our standardized research from research questionnaire from last year and this year. We apply it into a weighted average score on various different components from enterprise, from three portions essentially: your data, your operations, and your team readiness on all three aspects. Do you have the data that you need? Do you have it in the quality and the frequency that you need it in order to do what you want to do? Are your operations on working on data, building models, etc. ready? And then finally, do you have a team that can actually do that? Right? So these things help us validate how ready an enterprise is in generating what we call the enterprise maturity level score, which is then divided into a maturity cycle. Now, the enterprise AI maturity cycle is an observation we made into all the companies that we talked to, the companies that we surveyed, and based on this research, we realized that in the entire journey of adopting AI or data-driven decision-making system within the enterprise itself, generally they follow 7 stages. Okay, from level 0, which is where a lot of companies are. CEOs, boards love to talk about AI, without really understanding what is the purpose of AI for them. Do they actually need AI, and in which aspects of the business, right? So level 0 is where there is an awareness that they should probably do something in this space, but they don't know what it is yet. Okay, so that's level 0. To level 1, where they're actually making moves in building out the infrastructure required to make everything work eventually. If you don't have the pipes, you can't expect the water to flow, right? So it's all about establishing the infrastructure for your data and for your teams to work on that data, and also for further machine learning to be applied to it. Level 2, after those pipes are there, you start collecting the data. You have some data. You start defining what I want to do with that data. So within business, we have manufacturing, we have finance, HR, marketing, sales, retail operations and whatnot. Where would I apply my AI initiative to first? Okay, because there are probably millions of problems you'd like to solve if you have a crystal ball or an oracle at your disposal. There are probably a million questions you want to ask, but it has to start somewhere with the teams working on it. So typically, this is where businesses from the board level down to the execution teams are trying to figure out what is the business case that they want to prove. And with that business case, they can start deciding if I'll make more money, whether I'll save costs, and how much money I want to spend on these initiatives going forward, right? And after that, you move into R&D phase, which is when you actually start building something. You start experimenting with the models. You start identifying the tools that you need to build those models. Then next, you move into operationalization, where these models are proven and it's starting to work in production on a day-to-day basis. Okay, and it's starting to affect how your employees do work on a daily basis. And level 5 would be when it starts infusing proliferating across the organization. When you start from one use case, let's say typically it starts from sales and marketing, and then it starts moving towards your back-end operations, your logistics, your warehousing, or your production, manufacturing, and so on. Once it starts spreading across various different departments, we can start expect the basis of what we call AI democratization, where basically the technology and the benefits of it can be at the fingertips of every employee of the company. Okay, from maybe even your janitor, I don't know, hopefully, but basically for everyone within the organization itself, AI is supposed to help you improve efficiency, reduce costs, and really help people realize their greatest potential. And hence the aggregate value for the company itself. And that is what we see a lot of companies aspire towards in the end. But one thing that we also realize is as companies reach level 5 and level 6, they don't talk about AI anymore. If you go to Google, do you think people at Google talk a lot about we're going to adopt AI? Probably not, right? To them, to AI practitioners or machine learning practitioners, AI is a very weird term. Okay, it's machine learning, it's just, AI is just a very buzzy kind of gimmicky term, right? But to people at Google, at Facebook, Meta, or Netflix, you don't talk about that at all. So we realize that as companies reach level 5 and level 6, the whole concept of automation, of machine learning, of predictive analytics is really within the blood and DNA. It's not something that you talk about anymore. It's become a way of life. And that's when it truly has become a democratized initiative for within the enterprise itself. Now, it's a 40-50 page research paper, so but feel free, if you're interested in the full report, you can download it on our website at www.hiventures.io/SOTEA 2022. Okay, so I can send you guys the link later, but in the interest of time, let us just talk about the key highlights. Okay? Now, one of the key things that we realized, this is actually from 2021 edition, so last year's edition, but I thought it was actually very interesting. It was very impactful. The insight mattered a lot to us, which is that Taiwan's businesses, the enterprises, from small and medium businesses up to the largest conglomerates, there is a shift in what we expected the reasons for adopting AI for. Because Taiwan is a cost-down economy, right? We made our money in contract manufacturing. In semiconductor, where margins are, well, not wafer thin, but basically not very high either. It's all about scale. It's all about pennies on a dollar. And saving those pennies on a dollar at scale makes us a lot of money. But because we're so cost down on every single element of the way we think, employee salary, whether or not to adopt expensive software or cheap software that achieves, eons away in performance and satisfaction, you would probably still pick the cheaper one because it's cost down. Right, so we thought that it was very natural for Taiwanese businesses to pick cost down as the objective of adopting AI, because I have automation, and I don't need that many employees anymore. I don't need such a large factory plant anymore, right? So I would save money. But you realize that actually, based on our research, cost reduction is the least important objective for businesses and their leadership when they are adopting AI and its applications. In fact, what they're looking for is really enhancing organizational efficiency. Of course, efficiency, again, can be defined in many ways, right? You're talking about speed or you're talking about cost. Those are efficiency. But largely, people want to do business faster. Now, the context is, this was done in 2021, when COVID hit the world already, but not Taiwan. Because in Taiwan, we never felt the impact of COVID until July last year. Was it July? May, July last year. Basically, Taiwan was Hawaii for many people. We had a lot of American expats or Taiwanese who live in the US come back to Taiwan because we're La La Land. We're like Hawaii, zero COVID. So businesses answer just slightly different. But later on, we'll look at how businesses are responding because of COVID when it actually hit last year. Okay, so everyone was talking about organizational efficiency. It was interesting to us as well. They were talking about customer loyalty. Now, when we look at it, you realize that sentiments have shifted even globally about why people want to adopt AI. This is actually a brilliant time for this segment because COVID really just changed the way we as human beings and businesses, CEOs, look at things fundamentally, right? So fundamentally, in 2021, we were most appalled or delightfully surprised by this result because it is no longer about replacing humans with technology. It is about scaling that capability at scale, especially now that we need to move our factories to everywhere in the world. The CHIPS Act in the US is bringing our semiconductor plants into the US. Manufacturing has to be done at scale in a more decentralized manner. Are you going to do that? Because anyone who runs a factory would know that the success of the factory, a lot of it and its production, does not rely on the technology itself. It relies on one person. The veteran, I think the English name for it is the mid-journeyman. Basically the veteran, the oldest guy on the shop floor that knows if something is working simply by listening to the machine itself, right? And through our research, we spoke to some of them. Basically, they would tell you, we would ask, so how do you know if this system is going to break down? And they're like, oh, if you hear, the system's fine. But if it goes like, that's going to break in the next 2 weeks. And then our data scientists look at that because they're supposed to figure out how to predict if the machine will break, right? So how would a data scientist solve that? Because the user said, versus so because there's different sound. So some data scientists and engineers will put a microphone there and start to tell if the sound of the machine is changing. Okay? That's one way. But smart data scientists will start using vibration sensors or other ways of basically telling that capability because we cannot train hundreds of young factory operators to listen to So when you are going to expand to the US, to LATAM, to Southeast Asia, to Vietnam, to Indians, building a country, they only have one veteran operator. That guy cannot be in 5 places at the same time without being able to really just shift that knowledge that's locked up in their brain into a new way of identifying problems and efficiencies or configurations on the shop floor. Businesses cannot expand. So that's why they're looking at efficiency. It is all about scaling the business, okay? But not about reducing costs. Now, another piece of number statistic that we thought was interesting was, who do you think would be the most aggressive in adopting AI technology? The answer is sure. We thought naturally it would be the biggest guys, right? Again, TSMC's, the Foxconn and the Wistrons, MediaTek, right? Sure, these guys have adopted a lot within their enterprise, but if you look at the level of maturity in the amount of work that they've done within the past few years historically, and the level of sophistication at which they're harnessing those technologies, you realize that it is not the largest companies that do the best in this sector. It is actually the mid-large companies in Taiwan. In Taiwan, I think if you live here long enough, you'll hear Taiwanese talking about a group of people called the invisible champions, 隐形冠军. Most of them don't live in Taipei. Most of them live in Taichung. Or actually, further down south from Linkou, where we are right now, is Taoyuan. A lot of them live there too. Who are these people? The invisible champions are a class of people that They are champions within their sector globally. They might be the world's largest manufacturer of copper cable for Christmas lighting. They might be the world's largest manufacturer for a very small component in the car, but if you don't have that component, your car doesn't work. Okay? There are a lot of these people, in thousands, in Taiwan. And why are they invisible? Because they don't want to be taxed, right? So they're invisible. They're not public companies, but they make a lot of net profit that goes to them and their families every single month, year. For sure, it's not just Taiwan. A lot of countries in the world have that, especially in Asia. Taiwan, actually, probably the same thing as well. But these people have companies that are very small, actually. For the largest copper cable manufacturer for Christmas lighting, the entire business is about 200 people. And yet they're the largest in the world. We have the largest manufacturer of bamboo blinds in the world. How big are they? They own about 70% of all bamboo blinds you see in the world are manufactured by them. Especially if you watch it, see it in Hollywood movie sets, those are all them. 70%. I don't know who they are. But because they know that they have saturated the market, and then they don't find their next curve, when their kids take over the business, or when their kids are now trying to take over the business, it is one, either too boring, two, too outdated, and probably no longer very exciting, and will not be able to resist over time. Okay, so they start adopting new technologies, especially when a second generation, which is, people around our age, they're taking over the business now. They want to do it their way. They don't want to do it in the same way their fathers and their grandfathers did it. So that is a huge reason of why they're adopting technology, and very fast. Because they want to bring all the new ideas that they learn, going to school in the States, in Europe, and back here into their old traditional businesses and finding new opportunities for that. And that makes the mid-segment, the 200 to 500 people, 51 to 200 people, one of the most exciting segments. They have money, but they are also small enough to be very, very nimble, and they have a hunger to be bigger than they already are. That makes them more scary than the top guys at the top. And within this climate right now, the top guys don't adapt, then the small guys might not be small in the next 5 to 10 years, right? So this is actually a very interesting time from Taiwan's business history and the entire fabric of the economy right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same across many economies in the world, where people, it's been decades since, markets are open and second generation entrepreneurs are taking over family businesses. That's why this is a very common topic across everywhere in the world. Now, one of the key things we've also seen on a year-on-year basis is that last year did a lot to Taiwan in terms of enterprise adoption. So in 2021, when we first did the research, there were about 50% of the companies are here. Everyone's just talking about it, right? 50% of the companies are between 0 to 2 in maturity, and if we skip level 3, they had about 25% between 4 to 6. Okay, level 4 to 6. There was 0 in 6 in 2021, actually. But in 2022, about 50% of them have shifted into level 4 to level 6. Okay, and in fact, we saw the first emergence of a level 6 company where, again, democratization, where you're building a lot of models on a daily basis, and they're already so used to creating and operationalizing these models across their entire business already. And we saw 4, 2 in high-tech manufacturing, 1 in banking, and 1 in healthcare. Okay, that's the first time we saw that this year. Now, that shift was, like I said, largely driven by the pandemic as a catalyst. So when we asked the correspondents whether or not they felt that their organization has a heightened demand or urgency in adopting AI and big data technology within the companies, 57% of them said they did. Now, out of the other 42%, approximately half of them who didn't see a change were because their companies have been investing in AI way before the pandemic happened. They've been investing in it for years already. Some of our largest, most sophisticated companies, their CIOs and employees actually thought it was a no. They didn't accelerate. They were just enjoying the results of it. So all in all, you see that there are basically a lot of people driven by the pandemic to really adopt AI. Because last year, in May, out of nowhere, it hit us. Now, in retrospect, this year, looking at it now, so this report was done in March, right? So as you guys saw, it was published on 27th March. 29th March, if I remember correctly. So we were going to publish this at our Galaxy event, which this year we had about 1,300 people sign up to attend the event physically, and then another few hundred that were signed up to view it online from other places around the world. But that was March 29th, and March 27th was when the Center for Contaminable Diseases in Taiwan announced that we have 83 cases of COVID from basically like 0. All of a sudden, 27, we had 83. We freaked out because our Galaxy Summit was attended by the CIO, CTO, CMO, CFOs of all of Taiwan's largest semiconductor manufacturers. So the last thing we wanted was for COVID to break out at our event itself. And what was also scary for us was that because on 27th, the breakout was in Hsinchu, and as a result of the expatriation companies that basically brings foreign workers into Taiwan and then sends them to work in the semiconductor plants in Taiwan. So, which meant that COVID was in our semiconductor and manufacturing sector. So we don't know if those guys came, whether they will bring it to the event or if they will get it at our event. So we actually cut it down to about 200 people for the event. Everyone was super sparsely seated. But it really brought to light a few things, right? Because this pandemic, if we did the research again right now, this would probably further accelerate that urgency. Because last year, our peak was probably 1,000 or so per day. But this time with Omicron, the norm is 15,000, 25,000 a day. I have lived in quarantine voluntarily for the past 3 weeks and done numerous antigen tests, probably more than 10 times in the past 14 days, because people around me keep getting it, right? So that level of uncertainty is unsettling, right? I mean, for us, because maybe, I don't know, maybe you guys have a lot more experience with it. Last year India was really, really bad in India. I don't have that many friends in India, but all my friends in India have caught it. Right? Some of them didn't catch it in India, actually. Caught it in London for some reason. But it's unsettling because you don't know when you'll get it. Maybe it's easier just to get it. Get it done with. But that uncertainty is what businesses cannot survive on. And that is why, based on Bain's survey, not ours, and based on our survey, everything is about creating visibility for businesses within very uncertain times. So to improve business resilience to very uncertain demand factors. So again, Taiwan is very manufacturing driven, and manufacturing basically is very volatile based on demand. So for people who are familiar with the semiconductor industry, demand for semiconductor chips and its prices fluctuate very, very greatly in normal circumstances. In chip shortage, that's a different thing altogether, but it's highly volatile, right? And you don't know, because you don't know if shipping will stop next week or the week after. If there is something that is going to cause your production to slow down or shut down all of a sudden, because 80% of your workforce just caught COVID, right? And you can't force them to work on the production floors anymore. So because of these, you need to predict demand better, to predict your inventories, and create more granular decisions on your production, which was not possible with human intellect only. It will be based on large volumes of data, and that's what a lot of businesses started doing. Okay, and still, efficiency, even though cost reductions, like I said, last year wasn't that important, this year it became extremely important because there was too much losses this year in terms of impact on production and revenues in Taiwan this year. So in fact, this year the objective for AI adoption shifted a little towards cost reduction, and what we also saw was that manufacturing became larger adopters of this over sales and marketing type or retail type outfits in Taiwan. So in these business units, they are trying to lower costs, but lowering costs doesn't mean cutting people, but essentially lowering wastage on their production lines by predicting demand better. Okay, so that is what we saw this year, but we expect that to actually carry on for the next 12 to 24 months. But overall, what we believe is that once sales and marketing, the revenue generating functions, have adopted it, generally it will start moving towards back office operations in better efficiency in warehousing, logistics, and security, for example. But that has been on a backlog over the past 12 months because of the pandemic hitting. But what we do see, which is a piece of good news, is that more business units are adopting AI. So like I said, level 5 is when AI starts proliferating across different business units. You might start from sales and marketing and you're starting to move towards back office operations to logistics and warehousing. That's a parallel lateral shift in AI adoption. And we do see that this year there is an increase in that number. Last year, on average, of all respondents, about 1.66 business units within their business functions within every enterprise were adopting AI as applications in some form. But this year, that number went up to 1.89. So this is starting to show trends of democratization and infusing of AI laterally across the various different business units. And core AI technology is seeing commoditization. So typically, everyone would say, hey, ML, I'm adopting ML, but ML is very broad term. It can be applied to everything altogether. This year, we saw reduction in that. Those are core technologies, but if you're looking at some very application-specific technologies, those are picking up this year. Specifically, for example, computer vision and NLP, natural language processing, which is really understanding what a piece of text means, all those words mean for a computer, and trying to infer insights from there. These two technologies have been reported to have an increase, largely not because there is more research of computer vision and NLP within the companies, but because they are adopting end applications that leverage on these technologies. For example, RPA is a very big application over the past few years, especially in the finance industry. Insurance, for example, because processing claims, everything is on paper, right? It's not digital. But recognizing that paper traditionally required a lot of human beings, now RPA scans, reads it, and understands what it is, and automatically distributes it to the various different units that need to do it. There's automation that comes with RPA. Now that requires some form of computer vision or vision AI in order to help it tell something that is not Word, it's PDF, so it's an image, so you have to kind of read the image itself to do that. That has become more and more popular. Also, something that is very popular in Taiwan consumer manufacturing is AOI, Automated Optical Inspection of products that are being built. Are there flaws in it? Are there scratches on the laptops that are being produced? Those applications, that application requires cameras to be installed, either 3D, IR, or normal webcams to be installed to inspect those units, and hence machine vision is being applied. Now that doesn't mean that these companies are engaging in R&D in NLP or computer vision, but they're adopting these. Now also because of a lot of open source applications out there today, like Hugging Face, that really commoditizes basic AI algorithms and models. So because of that and the increasing willingness for Taiwanese enterprises to adopt open source, it is now increasing their adoption of these core technologies as well. Okay. I think the last point is towards operationalization. Operationalization is when your models, who are built in sandboxes and test environments, are applied into your daily basis in your production level, and it's being done at scale. You'll see that, again, Taiwan is a very interesting market. The global average of models that are developed that will be deployed in production. In other words, all the data scientists and engineers who create models in AI technology, out of 5 pieces of model, the global average is that 1 of them will actually be used ever in production. The other 4 are just either doesn't work, or too advanced, or they're very theoretical, so not in application and in use. But in Taiwan, last year we are at about 50%. So every 2 models that were developed, 1 was actually used in production. This year it was worse. Out of 4, 3 are being used in production. Now I use the term worse. Why is it worse? Essentially, it is very efficient, right? It means that there is no wastage of our team's time, right? For everything that we develop, it is good and it's usable in the production. But I personally think that it is not exciting. Why? The reason why it has such a high deployment rate is simply because we're just copying from other people. You're just taking models that work elsewhere and applying here, tweaking it a little. Of course your models work, and of course it's a high deployment rate. Now that is good in a way, very efficient, but it doesn't push the paradigm. The reason why a lot of models aren't used in production today are because they are still very innovative and very cutting edge technologies. They are created by researchers in OpenAI in foundations. They are really pushing that frontier. But Taiwan, we are not as innovative. We are not engaging in that R&D at this level yet. We are just really applying it very, very quickly. Now, I guess at every stage there is value in doing that. Right? Today, we want to see quick wins. We want to see results on the production floor. We want to see ROI, returns on investment. That's what businesses always think about, right? So in that point, we are okay. But I do hope personally that the entire industry will start shifting towards something more romantic and really pushing the innovation like we do in semiconductor, but applied in terms of the software and the model perspective. Now, there are very ambitious plans for driving AI adoption and AI research within these companies now. And we've seen that basically these companies are deploying very fast, but they're deploying a lot of it, but what is also good is that they're actually deploying it much faster. So last year when we did the research, most of them take about 1 to 3 months or 6 months and up. After they develop a model to actually use it in production, it's about 3 to 6 months, which is very slow because in software development, we talk about 2-week iterations and sprints. But model takes 3 to 6 months, then it's not that a model isn't created, it's just takes 6 months to use it in production, right? That is too slow. But this year, we see that really shorten. There are a lot of companies who can now deploy it in 0 to 7 days. Part of the reason is because of MLOps technologies and disciplines that allow, and your infrastructure is doing better, and that allows them to deploy a lot lot faster. Generally, people are getting better and they have better tools to help them deploy faster. That is great. So because of these capabilities and ambitious plans, all these companies are expecting to build more this year than last year. It's like a naval race, okay? So if I build 100 models this year and I deploy 75% of them, I want to build more this year than all the past years combined. So this year I will build 200, and next year I will build 500. It almost seems like it is exciting. It is exciting. It means that we are starting to see results come out of that. But we think that the problem with such an aggressive acceleration is the fact that most of them aren't actually ready to really go at that pace. Because while we see that a lot of people are adopting already, 60% of them actually have experiencing challenges that we consider early stage, baby teething stages kind of problems. Which means that you might have a problem with data collection fundamentally still, but you're trying to build huge models and large volumes of models very, very quickly on top of it. At one point in time, when your fundamentals are soft and weak, and you start building castles and towers on top of it, it will collapse. And when it collapses, it is catastrophic because the expectation is for factories to be lights out, for it to be completely autonomous. But if you're relying on AI to do all of that, basically to be completely autonomous, it means that AI is making a decision for you. You might not even know why it's making that decision, but fundamentally, AI is garbage in, garbage out. If you supply wrong data, it will give you wrong results. You don't expect to make a good decision off that info, right? And the problem with autonomy is that you won't know that it's making a bad decision until something bad happens, right? So without building the strong fundamentals, having good data collection and the right people and the right processes, build out something like that, and you're building it too fast, what we will potentially see are catastrophic crashes, which is why we advise and recommend all businesses to really relook at a few things. The 3 Ps: policy, processes, and people. Do you have the right people that are establishing policies to really look at how models should be designed, implemented, and governed? And then the processes of doing these over and over again. Some of these data or processes might actually infringe upon certain legal issues. So hence, multi-functional teams, including legal teams, need to come in and really validate if these things work over and over again. So these policies and processes need to be in to track and monitor the progress of their models. But in order to do that, they also need to be able to track it in the first place. So the adoption of technologies like data observability, AI explainability, and all of that will become more and more important. This is where it gets very, sometimes conflicting, contradictory, right? We believe that in order to achieve greater freedom and democracy, there needs to be greater governance and control. Okay, so this sounds odd, right? Freedom, control, governance. But fundamentally, data is at the heart of a business. It is tricky as business owners yourselves. One day you will ask yourself this question: how much should I let my employee know about the company's operations? About how well the company is doing? How much units are we selling? Should HR know about my production level? Should not finance team, but should maybe, the production floor, manufacturing team know my sales price, for example? Should they know who my customers are, for example? A lot of that data in traditional enterprises are siloed. We don't want everyone to know everything. Because if everyone knows everything, some guy leaves, then all my secrets are open to my competitor, right? That is a very traditional way of thinking. But the reverse is, if your employees don't know, they cannot help you think about it. And as the founder, Everything is here. You live and breathe your work every single day, and then you always feel like there aren't enough people to help you. That is because you don't know if you are comfortable sharing with them. In large conglomerates, it's the same thing. Think about it. They have personal data about users, they have financial data about their operations, they're public companies, so that cannot leak before their earnings are released every single quarter. It's scary, but without providing that data at the fingertips of the people who do work for you, you will never be able to raise their efficiency. Hence, the only way is by creating technologies that allow decision makers, business owners, to control that data very, very elastically, okay? Which means that either I can control you knowing certain types of data within a certain period of time, and it will not infringe upon core business secrets, but I can allow that sandbox to you and to every one of you from different departments at any given point in time. I know I can take it back whenever I want to, and I know that just because you know much more about the company than you did yesterday, you still don't know about everything yet. And you won't be able to take that data away. You can't steal it, right? As long as I have that comfort, then maybe as business owners, you will be more willing to let on more. And with more data and power to the teams, more AI can be adopted, more problems can be solved with technology, and more potential can be unleashed from there. So that concludes the summary of what we talked about generally. But yeah, I welcome any questions, and I hope I haven't bored you too much with too much statistics. But yeah, feel free. Thank you. Yes.
Do you have any data or case history on how AI actually help the business further enhance their operation?
We actually have quite a lot of those because each and every one of our portfolio companies do that. Okay, so say this guy over here, Profit AI. So Profit AI is a industrial AI platform, so to speak. So it's a piece of enterprise software that basically does predictive machine learning. Okay, so in the dumbest way to explain it, it is basically a calculator that helps you with predict y given x. Okay, so when there's x1, x2, x3, that would affect the output y, and you import all the historical x1 to 3s, and then ask them to extrapolate a y right back. So the system, so any problem that can be solved with this algebraic concept basically works on there. Now, with this very simple concept, they have solved over 130 different questions that enterprises have about their operations. And they've done it for some of the largest corporations as well. So, I can share some of them. For example, the most popular one, although we can't prove their quantitative value yet, but the most popular one today in Xinzhu is employee turnover prediction. To predict which of my employees, based on the past history of their work, okay? What time they come to work, what time they clock out for lunch, what time they come back from lunch, what time they leave the office, how much work they've done, their grading, and so on and so forth, their pay, their grade, all of that. With all that data to predict which of my employees will leave me and within how long a period. Now, the objective is for HR to be able to alert direct reports, direct supervisors to show love and to try to retain the person before the person submits a resignation, right? And why is it so popular now? Because there is a huge, there's a war over talent in the semiconductor field. Everyone's trying to take away from TSMC, so TSMC needs to go take it back from other people. So it's a thing in Xinzhu. It's a huge thing. And apparently there are certain Starbucks that are very well known to be hunting grounds where people go for interviews. So HR teams will actually send people to go sit at that Starbucks at lunch every day, just to see if any of their employees, teams, are in Starbucks right now. So that is a very popular application that is powered by our technology. But something that is more down to earth, printed circuit boards. Okay, this is down to earth but very boring. Printed circuit boards. Printed circuit boards, in order for current to flow and the system to work, it is coated with basically a alloy of gold and nickel, right? Gold prices fluctuate. Nickel fluctuate. And performance of the conductive capabilities are very dependent on quality of these two things and how thick you coat it. So the thicker you coat it up to a certain asymptote, very good conductive capabilities, but costs a lot of money, right? Cost down economy again. So now, how do you, for every single different permutation of the circuit board, what is the best configuration of nickel and gold in that alloy itself? How thick can I print this? And because when you print it too thick, there's also another problem they call the tombstone, where you know when they pull it up and then it creates a very tall kind of residue there, like a tombstone, and it creates problems in production. So I'm not an expert in that, but basically they use our software to predict what configuration is best for that, and generally it saves SMT, surface mounting technology, lines about 43% in costs and basically wastages as well. So cost of their alloy and the wastages of faulty equipment, that's about 43%. ASE, the largest semiconductor packaging, uses it for predicting power consumption and water consumption and how it should be allocated across the plant to save water and save power, two of the things that Taiwan doesn't have. And it's great. So I think that is very efficient. They don't disclose the actual number because it's semiconductor, but it is, in the words of their CIO, basically the amount of power and water that they save for them based on that dynamic configuration, within 1 or 2 weeks, the amount of money that they save for them is equivalent to the software licensing cost that they charge a customer, which is over $1 million NT every year. Okay, so that is that's about it, and you can build multiple technologies on that. So one of these topics can create that value. Another of our portfolio company is Full Lab. They do an even simpler thing. How many of you have businesses or experience in factories? Okay, so then I'm sure you know that a lot of the machines on a factory floor are super outdated. What operating systems do they run? Linux? Maybe. Unix? Maybe. Mac? Never. Windows 10? Never. Windows 95? Maybe. And very often, operating systems you don't know of because it's just firmware, right? So now, because of that, and because of certain protocols, every time materials are placed in front of the factory line, they are in the exact amounts that the process is required. And exactly the same as the process an hour ago, 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago, and past 10 days. It's exactly the same. But there are these factory operators whose job every single day, every minute, is to go to the factory line, enter the exact same number into that machine, and then leave. And then go to the exact same line on the next block, enter the same numbers again, and then so on and so forth. So every hour, they're running around, repeating the same thing over and over and over again. Why? In the world of the great web and Web3, blockchain, whatever, AI, people are still doing that over and over. And that's all he does. He runs around the factory floor, right? Why can't you automate that? There are RPA companies like UiPath, Automation Anywhere that are worth billions of dollars a day. They can't fix that because they only do it for Mac and Windows, and Windows can't fix it. 7, 8, 9, 10, right? They don't understand Linux, they don't understand Unix or anything else. So, what School Labs does is very simply help them automate that process. We can understand any form of interface through computer vision, understand the exact same numbers that you're keying in, and the buttons that you need to click in across that entire interface to get to that. Now, all we do is automate that for them. As long as the processes are exactly the same, the parameters are exactly the same, we will input it in the exact same flow that you want. Now, that might sound very simple, but the opportunity for that is three things. One, it allows for the data in these legacy systems that are locked up in there, or you have to pay SAP a lot of money just to plug in an API and pull that data out. It allows that data to be ported out and then moved into digital transformation and AI or other forms of business decisions, right? It couldn't, but now it can. That's one. Two, it allows for models like Prophet AI, which are best at calculating perfect parameter configurations for that system. With the data plugged into Prophet AI, you can then optimize that configuration and then tell the system back again, now change the numbers, do this configuration instead, and your yield becomes better conceptually, theoretically, in an autonomous manner. Okay, now, and then obviously you save time, these kids running around. But for TSMC, for example, the value is even simpler. Because even TSMC needs to do that same thing. Young kid, enter, click, 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 run away, enter, click, click, run away. The difference is they need to do it in a dust-free environment. They need to do it completely air-gapped to prevent from hacking, right? But every time that machine sits in a dust-free environment, but every time that kid opens the door, walks in, there is dust. So it is annoying for TSMC. And also, TSMC needs it to be air-gapped because whatever's in that room cannot be connected to the internet, or else it could be hacked. So then how do you do that? That's why till today, they were using kids to go in and enter. But with our technology today, they don't. Now that door doesn't have to be open every hour anymore. It's just something very simple like that. But the same technology for TSMC, they're using it for testing of all their equipment and design going forward. Now, again, I don't know. They won't tell us how much cost they're saving, but what we do know is that every single factory floor in TSMC is now adopting their technology. So, yeah. So these are very small things that create automation. They might not even be AI. It's not fancy. It solves very simple problems, but those problems are replicable across almost every factory floor in the world. That's what makes it fun. Any other questions? We'll go ahead and answer yours.
In terms of the, it seems to me that you are focusing on the heavy industry, but what about the medical AI arena?
I know about half of you guys here are in the medical space, half of you are probably in the IoT. We don't do, our fund doesn't do anything in medical related, med tech or life sciences and all of that, because it has a very different sales and value chain compared to the rest of the enterprise software world. So that's why we don't know very well how to do that and how to help our portfolio. But obviously we've seen a lot of technologies being built around, AI technologies built around that. And there are a few in Taiwan that we've advised from a completely Philistine on the sidewalk. We have no clue about medical, but from purely enterprise software standpoint, give them advice on. They do drug discovery and testing through AI itself. There are actually a few of that in Taiwan. There are AI technologies being adopted to basically hear heartbeats better, telemedicine, increase granularity of just measuring stuff, metrology and all of that. I think there is a lot of that. We just don't understand it very well. So to us, it's really funny as a VC, right? When you are from the data and AI space, everything you see in data and you're like, that's so. And then everything you see in healthcare at the same demo day or event, everything is like, whoa, that's really cool. But then you ask the healthcare guy, the healthcare VC on the same company, it's like, I don't know. Same thing. So for us, healthcare, life sciences is very interesting, but I'm an advertising major. I don't understand science bio very well. So yeah, but it's a big space in Taiwan. For some reason, entrepreneurs, the government, and many people around the world believe that Taiwan has a real shot in that space. From medical IoT, medtech, and bio life sciences as well. I believe definitely the former too. Not sure about the latter yet.
I see a great potential in the medical space because Taiwan has a single one insurance provider system.
National.
So all the data associated with that is basically controlled in one place.
Yes.
And so it's a great mind for people to get into understand
Right.
how the medicine performs.
Yeah, that is one big difference. We have seen quite a few companies in Taiwan that dwells on that type of healthcare related data, but not really for prescription and diagnosis. So some of them are using it towards insurance in predicting or scoring for insurance companies whether or not to actually create more granular products, because insurance policies today are very broad stroke, right? You have had a major surgery recently, you have had cancer, but the probability of a remission is very different for every different person that have the same, the same disease, right? So basically, it's statistics versus big data, right? Statistics is something that's just very broad, right? Yeah, back in the day, without big data, all you can do is use a sample and then extrapolate to its population. But statistics sometimes don't make sense. I don't know if I can say this in front of camera, but on average, all of us, every single human being has exactly one testicle, right? But is that possible? No, none of us have one testicle, generally speaking. But averages, right? Statistically, right? But those statistics are too broad, and hence with data and with granularity and with AI, insurance companies can create micro plans, personalized plans for every single person, even with the same kind of medical history. So that is the benefit of Taiwan National Healthcare Data System. But there are only very few countries in the world who can actually do that, because not many countries in the world have that level of detail. Japan is one of them, Singapore is one of them. That's about it. At least in Asia, that's about it. So tough business. Taiwan is small market, but if you can get into Japan, that's massive. Nothing else? Or any of you guys actually do anything in AI and data? Or are you more hardware device type?
We at the stage of collecting data.
Okay, so what are you in IoT or what space are you in?
Yeah, we use IoT to collect data, but then we work in ecology and
ecology.
Yeah, ESG, sustainability.
Oh, interesting. What type of data are you collecting?
We're collecting operational factors of the business and then translate them into CO2 emissions.
Oh, interesting. So Taiwan has a very interesting organization called G0V, government, right? In Chinese we call it G0V. They're a civic tech organization, kind of a hacker group of sorts, but it's hack for good. So one of the things that they have several initiatives, it's an open source community in Taiwan, and we're actually the third largest in the world behind Japan and I can't remember was Denmark or another Scandinavian country, but we are the third largest in the world. And one of the initiatives that they have done is work with the Ministry of Forestry in Taiwan to have sensors. I remember it's forestry and schools. So universities in Taiwan, they would have sensors at the top of their buildings or in certain locations within the forest to track CO2 emissions and create a live data stream of these areas. So obviously the government doesn't have the technology to do that, but Jilin thought it was very interesting to be able to track that and to provide that feed as a public feed to anyone, any researcher in Taiwan or anywhere around the world. That also falls back to your point about Taiwan Jianbao, National Healthcare System. Taiwan actually has a very open government data ecosystem. A lot of this data can be queried on API or, from a CSV perspective, you can download and access that data for research purposes or any type of governance. So it's actually, if that is something I would feel I could probably put you guys in touch. Sponsor G0B. Very interesting group. They do a lot of interesting projects. And no, the government doesn't decide what they do because they're completely autonomous. The founders of them don't decide either. It's people. So there were people who were interested in that, and a bunch of hackers within GDP just said, yeah, let's do that. We can do that. And then they pitched the government said, okay, sure, I can give you space, I can help you install it. It's pretty cool. If that's anything. Yes.
Yes. So in our case, we are planning to collect energy data. So
what data, sir?
Energy data.
Energy data.
So we are installing solar for the households and the businesses, and after doing the installation, we want to collect the consumption and production data live. So then we can utilize the data for different purposes, starting from running an algorithm and seeing the performance of the installation in order to spot if there is any faults and underperformance, or maybe the panels have to be cleaned. And then also by sharing this data, because companies who do P2P trading or virtual power plants, demand response, they all need access to this data. So our goal is actually to be this platform where you, instead of installing your own device to collect data, you just tap in and you get data and customers.
And are you doing it by installation, by factory plant, by building, by property, or how do you intend to collect that data? If the government doesn't have or provide it, how would you do that?
So basically, we would install IoT device with an inverter when doing the installation of solar. That would be collecting this data. For the future, at least in Europe, they're talking about the energy data hubs that you would be able to tap into the distribution network systems. But it's not really clear how granular that data will be and how live it will be, and it will be fulfilling our requirements. So maybe we will still have to do this to plug this device into each of the clients.
So what I do know is that Thai Power has a smart metering kind of initiative, because one of a very popular business in Taiwan, obviously it's not cheap to do that business. One of the very popular businesses for a lot of funds and conglomerates is to generate solar power and sell it back to Thai Power, because Taiwan's power group has a guaranteed acquisition price and clause, right? So if you can generate, they will always buy at a certain price. So it becomes fixed income, so easy, and you can always predict it. And as consumers, we can actually pick to opt to buy green power. So if we pay for green power, then within certain periods of time, our metering is switched to green power, and then it saves money and so on and so forth. And as a result of all these initiatives, you then need a metering system. So there is that initiative being launched in small parts of Taiwan, but I don't know how open Thai Power is in sharing that data. But I also do know that there's quite a lot of open data out there. There's a company that's also a TACC plus portfolio company called Kiwi New Energy. they have certain ways of collecting household power consumption data, or not necessarily household, including industrial and commercial. But they don't want to focus on industrial, they focus on commercial. At least they know their power usage rates by hour, time, and all of that. They have access to that data, and I think it's via an open API from Taiwan. So if that is something that is beneficial to help study that, yeah, I think there are some that do. And there are also TACC plus. The founder Steve is actually Taiwan US for trade review as well. So yeah, some connection. So yeah, there are a lot of these initiatives in Taiwan. There are some startups that are doing basically biomarker data research sharing, open source data. This is one thing that Taiwan is really good for. People are willing to share data. We have outdated data privacy laws that are very, very strict, actually. They're arguably more strict than the GDPR in Europe. But they're outdated. But they're there. But as a result of that, Taiwan is actually, the government at least, is very willing to collect and share that data for research purposes and for certain business purposes as well. So I hope maybe you will have an opportunity to collect at least sample data for your research or whatever in Taiwan and potentially build that business here. So yeah, do let me or TACC Plus know if we can connect you guys to some people in the ecosystem. Okay. Any other questions or ideas you want to share? Doesn't have to be questions for me. Doesn't have to be questions about AI in Taiwan, but if you do, feel free. Or you just want to share what you do.
Well, I'm not trying to encourage you to get into healthcare part, but one of your portfolio companies interested in working together with medical
This company works with Beiyi, Changgeng, and Qimei Yuan. It's a ML ops company, machine learning operations, basically the operating system for building machine learning models and all of that. We work with those guys because hospitals in Taiwan are actually adopting a lot of AI, and because, well, we know that we're very short-staffed, right? So generating efficiency. For example, one of the things that they do a lot for all these hospitals do this a lot, and hence they need software to build these models, is predicting ward availability to know if the beds there's going to be enough beds and capacity so that they can allocate, especially in COVID, where the government will tell you that you need to reserve this amount of capacity that is completely dedicated to COVID and so on and so forth. That math becomes very, very difficult. So a lot of hospitals, the more advanced one, and they're not necessarily in Taipei, but Changdeng and Nicole. Yeah, it's here actually. Who's that? Taipei Yuan and Qimei Yuan down in China. Yeah, all that. So they work with them. Medical is so the world's largest. By industry, the world's largest adopters of AI technology are banking, finance, manufacturing, and healthcare. Manufacturing obviously includes everything, right? Including automobiles and everything, but healthcare is actually the third largest buyer of AI. So yes, a lot of them do work with healthcare type companies in one way or the other, but depending on what facets we expect the development. Cool. All right, if there are any further questions.
TACC Plus,